Will Yadier Molina be in the Cardinals dugout in 2026? I don't know. Brenden Schaeffer and I will talk it over here on today's Card Central 365, brought to you by DraftKings, where the crown is yours. Brenden, earlier today, Katie Wu of The Athletic wrote an article about some of the sweeping changes, the minor changes that are going to be going on with the Cardinals, and nothing overly, I guess nothing too major, as we kind of have read about and kind of expected after being at the Chaim Bloom press conference a few weeks ago. But just little here and there, and throughout the entire organization, it seems like he's going to fulfill his promises of improving and kind of strengthening a lot of things that were seen as weaknesses over the last 5 to 8 years.
Yeah, and look, I think a lot of the staff changes and shuffling going on is probably pretty standard when you are ushering in a new era and some new leadership. I don't think that, as you said, Joe, anything that we read from Katie's reporting is necessarily groundbreaking, but it's just kind of more of that housekeeping level. Obviously, for the individuals that are impacted, some folks being reassigned to various different roles, some new folks coming in. That's going to be noteworthy. But I think from like a helicopter view in the grand scheme of things, this just does all feel more in line with sort of, exactly what you said, what Chaim Bloom has been getting ready to do and ushering in his era of leadership. Some of the tweaks and moves and changes that are being made, I think makes sense for the direction the Cardinals are looking to go.
And it is somewhat noteworthy, the mention of Yadier Molina in this article, as you can read it now up on the Athletic New York Times website. It says here that Yadi is not believed to be part of the staff next year, but the Cardinals remain open to finding a role for Molina within the organization. The reason I say that's kind of noteworthy right now is, what was it, 2 weeks ago, you and I talked about the fact that Yadi took to Instagram. Told us, first of all, gave us a 24-hour heads up. Hey, I'm going to post something on Instagram. And then the next day he went to Instagram and said, hey guys, I want a job, like hire me. And, we kind of took that as the Cardinals said, hey, not yet, not this year. Now's not the right time. So Yadi went out to all 29 other teams that have never worked with Yadier Molina before, and he said, hey, does anybody want me? And as we kind of are seeing this cycle start to wind down with managerial openings throughout baseball, the Nationals are hiring a 33-year-old. We found that out today. The Twins are hiring Derek Shelton. Albert Pujols had an almost 10-hour meeting, longer than Game 4 or Game 3 of the World Series.
Barely longer.
He had a second interview with the Padres. That looks like it's happening. So the jobs are starting to dwindle. And in the game of musical chairs, Yadi is kind of without a seat right now. So maybe it is time to circle back to the Cardinals and say, hey, look, okay, bench coach is taken, hitting coach is taken. Where do I fit in? What can I do for you guys?
If that's the route he wants to go, then I think that is certainly going to be an option, potentially. I'm skeptical that it will be. Again, we have heard this from Yadier Molina before, that he's interested in, going to want to be a manager and be a coach. And like now he's made the public overtures to tell everybody in MLB and Mexico, like, I'm ready. Here I am. I don't know what the next step into forming a connection would be. I imagine that Yadi has good relationships around the game beyond just in St. Louis. And if he's serious about it, Joe, then I think something will come to fruition somewhere. If it's still more of I want to do it, but kind of on my terms, then you might not see Yadi end up anywhere this time around, because I think, that idea of the caliber of player that he was. And so like the name recognition and the salaries earned and all those things that, go into having a career like Yadi had, a lot of times those are the folks that they don't necessarily need to jump right back into coaching and involvement in the game, right? From like a financial perspective.
Right.
You think about Matt Holliday when he was going to be the bench coach. And then it was like, well, let me think about that. Do I really want to invest the commitment and the time and everything that goes into that, short of being like a manager? Because everybody wants to be a manager, right? That would be a lot of fun. You're in the big chair. But Holiday kind of rethought about that and has, just kind of been doing his thing. And Yadi, it doesn't look like he's going to be a manager, right? Like, I would be actually shocked if you were getting a managerial offer in this cycle. So, then the decision becomes, do you really want to be involved in it and work your way back in, which is probably the way you open some doors to get that managerial opportunity, versus, just kind of waiting in the wings and seeing if the right thing pops up, and maybe having the leverage on the cachet of your name and your experience level as a player to potentially be able to step right into that role. Like, we've seen players with no coaching experience do that, former players. And so maybe that's something that Yadi would be holding out for and hoping for. Obviously, there's no opening in St. Louis right now. And as you mentioned, the other jobs are starting to be claimed. And so it'll be interesting to see from that perspective what Yadi wants to do and, how aggressively he pursues any role over just maybe the roles that are more glamorous and the one that you might like the best.
I think too, if I'm the Cardinals right now, I need to see, I can't just hire Yadi on a whim and be like,
No.
hey, you know what? You're one of the greatest players of our organization's history. Here's a job. I feel like you kind of need to see that commitment from him.
Sure.
And the way that it ended here, not, his tenure here didn't end poorly. It wasn't, some big divorce at the end. But I do think there were things that happened in that final year that the Cardinals as a whole, the DeWitts are probably going to look at and go, all right, hey, we hire him as our bench coach. Is he going to be there all 162 games? So it's kind of like, hey, Yadi, why don't you come to spring training and
that be like the role that Ryan Ludwig and different guys have been in, where they be the advisor that actually shows up to spring training, right? Like, that was what was discussed was going to happen the first time a couple of years ago. And, he had, family matters and different things that he wanted to prioritize, which is totally fine. But I think you're right, Joe. Before, I think the Cardinals would, and they do have a bench coach, that's not even a role that's open. So if you're talking about uniform staff, what would it even look like and what role would he be filling if it was truly an in the dugout type of role? There's not a pseudo manager. That's not a role that's available to him. And so I think you're 100% right. If that reunion is going to happen at some point between Yadi and the Cardinals, I think the best place to start would be, hey, let's do this advisory role. It can be cushy. It can be more on your terms, but it still has to be, there's a way to demonstrate that, right? To where if at some point in the future, the managerial role did open up, which I personally don't expect to happen. I know Cardinals fans feel differently, but I'll continue to beat the drum for Oli Marmol. That would at least be something that the individuals that are now in charge of St. Louis could look at and say, oh, we got some experience with Yadi. We know what Yadi's all about. We've seen him work, with our players. We've seen him work within an organizational structure and fit, right? And what he brought as a player was undeniable. There was no question of what was Yadi's fit. His fit was winning you baseball games. But I do think there's a little bit of a different role that one would have to fill outside of that player capacity. And I think you're right. A spring training advisory role as something to start with. If Yadi doesn't end up with the role of his dreams with another organization this season, I certainly would hope that would be something both sides would be open to, Joe, because it seemingly would make a lot of sense.
Yeah, and as we continue to go on here and we see more of these jobs start to be filled around baseball, like I said, we'll see where Yadi ends up. Maybe it's not even so much spring training. It's like, hey, why don't you come to winter warmup? Come to that first. Let's baby steps here.
Be involved in something. Sure, I hear you.
Yeah. So a time will tell to see what the future looks like for Yadi. There were some other changes that were made and a few other things announced. But before we get to those, hey, NFL fans, what's your favorite touchdown? For me, it's the next one, because with DraftKings Sportsbook, an official sports betting partner of the NFL, every touchdown can bring you closer to cashing in. From first-time touchdown scores to anytime TD props, the thrill of live in-game betting. Every snap is loaded with opportunities, and that comes your way on December 1st here in Missouri. If your team hitting pay dirt pays out to you, download the DraftKings Sportsbook app and use code STL Sports. That's code STL Sports for new customers. Turn $5 into $300 in bonus bets if your bet wins. In partnership with DraftKings, the crown is yours.
Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER. In New York, call 877-8-HOPE-NY or text HOPE-NY at 467-369. In Connecticut, help is available for problem gambling. Call 888-789-7777 or visit ccpg.org. Please play responsibly. On behalf of Boot Hill Casino and Resort in Kansas, 21 and over. Age and eligibility varies by jurisdiction. Void in Ontario. Bet must win to receive reward. Bonus bets expire 168 hours after issuance. For additional terms and responsible gaming resources, see dkng.co/audio.
The other announcements, the other news that was in the Katie Wu article on The Athletic, just really, I mean, the biggest parts of it had to do with exactly what Chaim Bloom said he was going to do last month, and that was beef up the scouting, beef up the minor leagues, beef up the international side of things. And again, it shouldn't be as newsworthy as it is because every team should be doing it, but it's just, it's kind of nice to see that this is continuing to be in the news, and Chaim Bloom is sticking with what he said he was going to do.
Yeah, I would still consider a lot of this to be more on the housekeeping side, Joe. Like, the specifics of it are probably not that interesting to fans, and it's more minutia. But I'm telling you, the Cardinals believe, and Chaim Bloom believes, that these things behind the scenes definitely do matter. Katie writes that the club is looking to hire a director of hitting to oversee the offense from a more organization-wide approach, and she opines that's similar to kind of the Matt Pierpont role as we talk about him as the director of pitching. That's an individual that Chaim brought in after he was authorized to do so before the 2025 season. And so, like, that's one of the notables. And there was also a report in here that an international scouting director that would serve underneath assistant GM Moises Rodriguez is also something the team is looking to hire and fill, according to Katie's sources with The Athletic. So, like, that's again, it feels kind of like, well, sure, like, what does that all mean? It's just beefing up that infrastructure. It's exactly what Chaim Bloom had talked about doing. She also notes Dean Kiekhefer and Packy Elkins will no longer be on the uniformed coaching staff, will remain in the org and other roles. And then it looks as though, Joe, everybody else from that coaching staff, Descalzo, Brant Brown, Dusty Blake, Stubby Clapp, Pop Warner, and John Jay, are expected to return, as will Jamie Pogue and Kleininger Turan. So, like, the rest of the uniform staff feels like about what it was. And then there's a couple of uniform staff that they've reassigned. So will they backfill those roles in another way? That certainly seems to be a possibility. Like we kind of talked about, it's all minor stuff, and the headline grab as well. Does Yadi fit into any of those opportunities? And that's kind of what we'll wait and see. I would be skeptical, though, just based on the tea leaves. From my opinion on that, Joe, is, like I said, I think that you maybe start small with something and can build into more as both sides kind of feel out what feels like a good fit there. But certainly a lot of these moves and maneuvering, I think, matters and makes sense as the Cardinals try to get aligned and where they're heading moving forward.
And for those that actually that care about the minor things like this, the Cardinals will be seeking a new head athletic trainer. The former trainer, Adam Olsen, was reassigned to a front office position and will serve as the director of medical training. So when a Cardinal player gets hurt next year, you'll see somebody new running out onto the field to go tend to them.
And, like, I don't have a hot take on that, right? Like, a lot of this stuff is just organizational minutia that happens in any organization. I'm not even talking about in sports. Like, it's probably interesting water cooler topics if you work in insurance and, so-and-so from the sales division gets reassigned. But, like, that's, to me, kind of the extent of it. You know what I mean? Like, I don't know that a lot of these things are extremely impactful, but behind the scenes, certainly they matter. And they're just trying to, get everything where they want it to be. And that's just the nature of the beast. Pretty much any organization, I think, would have these types of off-season maneuvers. Yeah,
it's normal off-season. So I don't think anybody is at all shocked that the Cardinals are bringing back all of their coaches. I don't think that's a surprise at all. If this is, the Mets, I think I saw were bringing back their hitting coach. And I think you look at that and you're like, really? Like, they're just not cleaning house entirely. Like things like that are a bit surprising here in St. Louis with the Cardinals this season of all seasons. It's, it's expected. So
yeah, I would agree with that. Yeah, I don't think there's anything really more to add to it, but it's something more than nothing, Joe. As we're kind of winding down, World Series has actually been really compelling, and the Blue Jays might take it. I think that would be great for the sport, by the way, if the Dodgers don't win that second one in a row, and everybody can look and say, see, it is possible to vanquish the almighty Dodgers, and so everybody can kind of go into next season saying there is at least a little bit of proof of concept in this era where it felt like the Dodgers were fixing to buy their championships and do it every single year. I think everybody, it's funny. I call the Blue Jays America's team. Well, they're Canada's team, but we're all kind of still pulling for Toronto. It feels like
North America's team. That's
there you go.
Yeah, there you go. That route with it. Hey, tomorrow's topic: can Liam Doyle be the next Trey Savage? We will break that down for you in depth on Card Central 365,
and hopefully the answer is yes. By the way, to that, because that kid is unbelievable what he's doing.
Yeah, Ryan Fagan and I will give our hottest of hot takes on that and get you pumped up for Liam Doyle in 2026. Until then, though, he's Brenden Schaeffer. I'm Joe Roderick. This has been Card Central 365, brought to you by DraftKings. The crown is yours.